This broadcast will start in 30 seconds. This broadcast will start in 15 seconds. This broadcast will start in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Voice of Stockton. For more information on The Voice of Stockton, go to thevoiceofstockton.org.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS The Voice of Stockton or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Phone Booth here on KXVS The Voice of Stockton. My name is Ed Heitman, and joining me in the studio today is my good friend and co-host, Brian Rodriguez.
Hello.
How are you doing today, Brian?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good to hear. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what our show is all about, the Phone Booth is a show completely dedicated to pop culture. Anything from movies, to TV shows, to video games, to comic books, you name it. We like to do our very best to cover it. Now, we're doing a little bit of a special format today, as you could tell with our super cool camera angles and whatnot, but I'm pretty excited to get this show on the road. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Okay, so let's get started. Before we tackle our main discussion pieces, we always like to do a quick little recap on any events that occurred in pop culture within the week. So, without further ado, let's take a quick little moment to have a quick breakdown on this week's pop culture events. So, if you haven't heard yet, the Emmy nominations are finally out. In case you weren't aware, the Primetime Emmy Award is an American award bestowed by the Academy of Television, Arts, and Sciences in recognition of excellence in American primetime television programming. There are plenty of sites out there with the current list of nominations, so we encourage you all to go give them a look. Now, we didn't cover the Emmy nominations on today's show because there's just so many to talk about, right, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, Game of Thrones itself got 22 nominations. Netflix set a record with getting 121 nominations across all its... Sorry, not 121, 112. Lots of big number. It's a big number anyway.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
112 nominations.
There's a lot of people who currently have nominations right now for the Emmys. If you don't mind, Brian, would you mind explaining to the audience what exactly the difference is between the Emmys and another award ceremony like the Oscars or something like that?
Well, the Oscars are focused pretty much, well, exclusively on movies, on theatrical films, released in theaters, viewed for 2 hours, things like that. While the Emmys are focused on television. And the Emmys also cover a wider range of categories. Like with the Oscars, you could have Best Actor, Best Film, Best Actress, things like that. Well, with the Emmys, you'd have Best Dramatic Actor, Best Comedy Series, things like that. It's a lot more of a diverse thing to reflect that there's a lot more television than there is movies at this point. Mm-hmm. And it covers just sort of a broader range to cover a broader spectrum of media.
I agree. It's important for a lot of people to realize that, because I remember when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't really understand the difference between the two. But you're right, there are a lot more categories out there for the Emmys as opposed to the Oscars, whereas with the Oscars, it's just leading actor in a film. With the Emmys, it's leading actor in a comedy, leading actor in a drama, leading actor in a morning time soap opera kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm. And on the one hand, I like that it's more diverse. I think it's good that, what if one person is, good in a comedy series, they aren't automatically declared the better actor over someone who did amazingly in a drama series. They are both,
Mm-hmm.
great. On the other hand, it makes it a lot harder to cover because there are just so many topics.
There really is, and that's the only reason why we haven't had the opportunity to discuss the Emmys on this show. But perhaps at some point in time within the week, we'll do a quick little segment just listing off a few names.
Yeah.
Anyways, Brian, I'm going to pass it over to you for this next little bit of news.
Okay. Mecha fans, rejoice. Last week, it was confirmed that Mobile Suit Gundam, a phenomenal genre-defining anime, is getting a live-action film adaptation. It was announced at last week's Anime Expo, and it will be a collaboration between the anime's original studio, Studio Sunrise, and Legendary Pictures, who are known for things like the Pacific Rim franchise, the current Godzilla shared universe with King Kong, all that. They know how to do big things fighting each other. Now, for those of you that don't know, Mobile Suit Gundam was a mecha anime back in the 80s. It was about an intergalactic civil war between a faction of Earth and a faction of colonies that were fighting each other for independence and the whatnot. Pretty standard fare. And it follows a group that is creating a new weapon to fight this war, the Gundam, which is just this giant mecha, a giant robot that can... It's just amazing. It flies to space, it shoots things, it has sword fights. And there have been a lot of variations on Mobile Suit Gundam. I think there have been over 20 different anime series themselves, not including all the other...
I know recently on Toonami, they just recently finished the Gundam series Iron-Blooded Orphans.
That was pretty good. I wish it had gone on longer.
Yeah, which involved the Mars... Some of the Mars Revolution or something like that.
It's actually set in a different timeline from the one they'll be covering in this movie, which will be covering the original anime, which is the Universal Century timeline, which is a bit more, the power of friendship powers our mechas, whereas Iron-Blooded Orphans was more the power of gasoline and bullets powers our Gundams. If you run out of gasoline in space, you're pretty much dead.
Reasonable. But I mean... I'm excited about this project because of the fact that they're cooperating with Legendary. The fact that they've handled giant mech things like the Pacific Rim films. Great franchise. I didn't care much from what I've seen of the sequel myself, but I fell in love with the original. So to see that these guys are going to be handling a mecha anime is probably a good call. And this might be the only live-action anime right now that I am actually genuinely excited for.
For me, there's also rumors of a Death Note sequel. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. We can disagree about that, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, well, yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, folks, Captain Marvel has finally finished its production phase on Monday. Ooh. Yes. If you're unfamiliar with the term, the production phase is the second phase in creating a feature film, where all the filming and editing is done. You see, there are three different steps in creating a movie. There's pre-production, where people do the writing and the scene writing and getting everything set. Then there's production, where we actually have the actors say their lines on camera. We actually have the scenes reenacted and everything and caught on film. Now, all that's left to do is post-production, which is when we do all the editing and special effects, and we tie everything up with a nice little bow to send off to theaters worldwide. Now, Captain Marvel is set to debut in theaters next year on March 8th, and will be directed by Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden. And I gotta say, from what I've seen, what they've talked about with Captain Marvel, it looks like a really good movie.
It does. It's actually going to have some people returning from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For reference, it's set in the early 90s, but it will have both Samuel L. Jackson and Clark Gregson, I believe is his name, who plays Philip Coulson in the film franchise and later TV franchise, coming back. They will both be digitally de-aged to look like they did in the 90s.
Digitally de-aged.
Which, to give you some perspective on what Samuel L. Jackson looked like back then, that was back around the time of Pulp Fiction and...
I want to say Pulp Fiction. Perhaps was Glass done? No, was Unbreakable done around?
That was 2001, I believe.
Oh, okay.
2001 or 2002.
Okay, but around that time.
Yeah, in there, Samuel L. Jackson hasn't aged a ton. He's one of those actors that sort of looks the same.
That's true.
He's like Paul Rudd.
The only time you ever can tell that he's aged at any bit is when he's forced to grow hair for a role. But when he doesn't have any hair or anything, he looks the exact same as he did a long, long time ago. Yeah. And I believe Brie Larson is supposed to be playing as Captain Marvel in this project.
Yep, Brie Larson will be playing Captain Marvel going up against the Kree in the 1990s. Jude Law will actually be returning as Ronan the Accuser, the villain from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, I didn't know about that one.
Yep, we don't know the extent of his role. It may just be a cameo, but...
Okay. Well, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we will keep you guys well informed on any news or information regarding this project because I'm genuinely excited. We're all excited to see this movie come out. I always love a good spacefaring Marvel film. I'm a huge fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, so this is going to be good. I really hope. All right, Brian, I'm going to pass this next little bit of news over to you.
We have our first casting announcement for Star Wars Episode 9.
Yes!
First off, Kerry Russell, who you've probably seen starring in The Americans and other such sort, is going to be in it in an undisclosed role, of course, because Lucasfilm, they're not going to tell us anything till the movie comes out.
Of course.
And the more exciting one is it's been confirmed Billy D. Williams will be returning as Lando Calrissian.
Yes!
We don't know how large his role will be, if he'll be a main character or if he'll just sort of be appearing in a cameo, but this is what fans have been asking for since The Force Awakens. They've wanted Billy D. back. I'm happy. I'm happy we're getting more Lando.
I'm happy too, man. That's one of the things that I really love about this current trilogy. I mean, a lot of people give it flack because it doesn't feel like the originals to them, but in my opinion, I just love it because we're seeing all of these original characters get reintroduced into these new trilogies.
And then killed off.
But their story ends on good, subtle notes.
Yes.
Except for Princess Leia. It was a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, and there's nothing they could do about that. That's just an unfortunate tragedy that...
Yeah, but supposedly in Episode 9, it's theorized, spreading around the Star Wars fandom, that the movie will probably open with a funeral or some way to pay tribute and respect to Princess Leia since Carrie Fisher had passed away. But it's uncertain at the moment what exactly it's going to be about. But the fact that Billy D. Williams is coming back as Lando it's perfect. Because I've kind of been hoping that he would come back ever since Solo had come out. Because when Donald Glover had played as Lando, he looked exactly like a younger version of Billy D. Williams in that movie. You know, so I'm excited about that one.
I'm just hoping we have some interaction between Lando and Chewie, because Episode 8 touched on it, but they've sort of skirted around the consequences of Han dying and how that would affect the people in his life. Because we did have a scene of, Luke dealing with his grief in the Millennium Falcon, and we did have a bit of Leia dealing with her grief, but it hasn't really been addressed.
Yeah,
much.
It's true. That's true. All right. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take over for this next little bit of news. So, recently, a few episodes back on the phone booth, we announced that Jared Leto would be getting his very own Joker movie, which he will star and executive produce. And it's received a little bit of mixed criticism. Some people are really excited, some people not so much, but I digress. We also mentioned at that episode that it's not to be confused with the Todd Phillips' Joker movie, which we now have news regarding. Turns out that Academy Award-winning Joaquin Phoenix has been confirmed to play as the Joker in this film. This information comes to us from The Hollywood Reporter, which confirmed the fact. The untitled movie is set to start production late into the fall. Todd Phillips will be writing the script based off of a script he wrote alongside Scott Silver, and the legendary Martin Scorsese will be the producer of this project. We'll keep you informed on any other facts and details regarding this untitled film as more information comes to light. But this sounds amazing, this movie.
Yeah, I remember Joaquin Phoenix said in an interview that he was actually scared of the Joker that was going to be in this movie, which I think is a pretty good sign. We're going to be getting a very dark Joker, probably, and not like edgy dark like Jared Leto's Joker was, but properly more Heath Ledger dark.
Yeah. It's also been theorized that perhaps this film, instead of being the Joker in his prime, would be more of an analysis of the character. Perhaps showing his origin story, showing him as a normal person up to his breaking point until he eventually becomes the Joker. And if that's the case, I would be very interested in watching this film because the Joker, out of all the Batman villains, he really does have a very interesting origin story, just because of the fact of how vague it's always been.
Yeah, and see, that's the problem I have with the idea of an origin story movie, is that his background is purposely vague. They've compared it to a multiple choice question, basically, is what his origin story is. You always get the same sort of idea, but the details change every time, mainly because no one knows, not even the Joker, sometimes. And I don't like the idea of sort of nailing down an origin story for him.
Well, I mean, perhaps they don't nail down the origin story for the Joker. Perhaps that actually is like imagine a scenario where like the Joker's being interrogated by somebody. and they're trying to get him to tell his origin story and everything, and he starts explaining. And throughout the movie, he gives different origin stories, but they just kind of like melt into each other and everything as he's explaining. You know, I mean, there's potential there. So that way you could like, it's like people who want to try and be really, really involved to try and pay attention to the details, only they notice that the details are starting to become more and more invalid as he starts explaining his life more and more, you know? Mm-hmm. But I mean, perhaps there would even be a finite origin story to the Joker, because I know it's been theorized, floating around, that there is one origin story that is the specific one that might be realistic, and it's the one where he was a failed comedian who went on a crime spree for his girlfriend, but he got tossed into a vat of acid by the Batman and everything.
That is one of the more popular ones, mainly because it's one of the more used origin stories for the Joker, and it's a good story. It's a popular story, but it's sort of the basis for most Joker origins now. You know, he was a guy that became the Red Hood, went on a crime spree. Sometimes he's roped into it. Sometimes he's the leader. But he's the Red Hood. He gets dropped into the vat of chemicals, comes out as the Joker. And I'm hoping that they just sort of stick with that and don't try to nail down too many more details like, what's his name? No one knows. Doesn't have a name. He's the Joker. It's
been mostly floated around that his name is Jack, but that's literally all we have.
Yeah, Jack. In some stories we've heard him refer to himself as Jack before, and like in one he had a nephew, and the nephew called him Uncle Jack before the Joker shut him up. In some he's been called Jack Napier from the original 1989 Batman film.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's been Jack Nichols, which is probably my favorite.
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, just
a little homage to the original. Little homage.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'm gonna pass this little bit of news over to you, Brian.
So, for the past, I believe it's been 8-9 years, Marvel has been teasing us with the idea of a Black Widow solo movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep teasing us with it.
Over and over and over.
And then they keep making movies about male superheroes. And some of them, pretty good. Some of them, not so much. But they keep teasing us with this Black Widow movie. And we're finally getting it, hopefully.
No. It has been confirmed.
Yeah.
We actually have a director on board now.
They also confirmed we were getting a Nick Fury movie, and look where that got us. But so far, we have a confirmed director in Kate Shortland, known for 2012's Lore and the Secret Life of Us. Apparently, after a search for a director in April that went through 70 to 75 different interviews for the position, Shortland beat out Emma Asante and Maggie Betts as runner-ups for the position. But it was Scarlett Johansson herself who pushed for Kate Shortland to direct the film. There's no release date. There's no any additional casting besides hopefully Scarlett Johansson. It's not even in production yet. We don't even know if there's a script. But hopefully this will finally get the ball rolling. Only took them like 9 years, an uber successful female-led movie in Wonder Woman, and Marvel making another female-led superhero movie before it.
I'm genuinely excited that we're getting closer and closer to getting on board with the Black Widow movie, because you're right, it has been teased for so long, and we've gotten so many other movies like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and whatnot that would like kind of hint more and more at her origin story and her background and whatnot, and which rightfully fans got a little frustrated over, because this entire time we've been waiting to hear an origin story for Black Widow, yet we've been getting fed the origin story already in different films, but I still have high hopes for this. I really think it'll eventually start into production, hopefully sometime late within this year or sometime late within next year. But it has potential. I love Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think with enough fan demand, it'll get done.
Wonder what new hairstyle she'll have for this film.
You think she's gonna keep her hair blonde, or do you think
Nope.
it's gonna be an origin story where her hair is back to red?
Even if it is an origin story, it'll be a new hairstyle. She has never had the same hairstyle in any two films. They change it for every film. I don't get why, but I mean, I think Infinity War is the biggest change in dyeing her. But it was really curly in Iron Man 2. It went for a sort of short. I don't know what you call it. It's almost a 50s sort of Stepford Wives haircut.
Yeah.
Long hair in Captain America 2. It's just all over the place. Pick a hairstyle.
I find it weird that she keeps going through so many hairstyles, seeing as in the comic books it's kind of just always stayed the same, except for when she goes on reconnaissance missions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we'll keep you guys informed on any news or information regarding that movie. Which leads us to our last little bit of news to sum up the week. Ubisoft has begun taking drastic measures to deal with Rainbow Six Siege's toxic player fan base. Now, if you guys had tuned in to a previous episode that we had at the phone booth, we announced Overwatch's endorsement system. And the way the endorsement system worked was that players were rewarded by acting nice to each other with potential benefits that happened at the end of the game. You would get endorsed, you'd get extra bonus experience, and all that good stuff. But Ubisoft is taking a different approach. Instead of rewarding people for being nice, they're rewarding people for being mean. Now, using slurs or toxic language in a chat will result in an instant ban. For your first offense, it lasts 27 minutes. The second offense, it would be 2 hours. And your third offense gets you a week-long ban, as well as an investigation that could end in a permanent ban. Now, man, I think that's a good call.
Yeah, they're two opposite ends of the spectrum, and I like both of them. I like that there's just an instantaneous ban for being a bad person. Now, there is a workaround to the system, and it's actually really easy. It's don't be a garbage human being.
Yeah.
Really simple. That's the way to get around the system. I don't know why no one's tried it before. It's insane. It's insane how easy it is. I can't wait for them to patch it out.
You know, I gotta say, I like it as well, because I like the fact that they're at least experimenting, seeing ways that would work. I know that Microsoft had said a while back they wanted to find ways to deal with the toxic fan base, but no matter what attempts that they had made, they just didn't seem to know how to get this done.
It's because the toxicity evolves. It's, 1 second they're actually saying racial slurs, the next second they're using, code words for racial slurs that become understood as the slurs, and those get banned, and they come up with new words, and it's... Toxic people evolve.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that about does it for our weekly wrap-up on things in pop culture this week. We're more than excited to share any extra news with you guys during next week's episode, but for now, let's enter our next little segment called Trailer Talk. Now, in this little segment, Brian and I like to discuss the latest trailers that come out within the week. And luckily for us, we got ourselves a good little list of trailers coming out. Brian, are you excited?
Some of them, about half and half, I think.
Okay, yeah, about same here. Well, anyways, folks, let's get to talking. Our first trailer that we're going to talk about is for Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween, starring Jack Black as R.L. Stine, respectively. Slappy is back to wreak more havoc this Halloween in a brand new comedy adventure based on R.L. Stine's 400 million selling series of books. It's directed by Rob Letterman and Ari Sandel. Now, if you haven't seen the trailer yet, the premise is that a couple of kids go into this old abandoned house. And behind this secret compartment that's behind a fireplace and everything, they happen to come across this book. Now, in the first Goosebumps book, all of R.L. Stine's classic work were all sealed into these little tomes. And when the tome opened up and it broke, the creatures that are inside that Goosebumps book will come out of it into reality, and they would wreak havoc all over the place. However, in this trailer, the kids come across a mysterious book that had never come out before called The Haunted Halloween. And they, of course, being kids in a horror movie, just so happen to have accidentally opened up this tome. And instead of just a specific creature coming out, it seems to be all of the Goosebumps creatures mentioned in the previous film, and perhaps even some extra ones. Now, I'm looking forward to this movie because I kind of like the first Goosebumps film. It felt a lot like, it felt exactly like what I would read, in the books.
Yeah, I didn't really love it. It was very much a kids' horror movie, but the Goosebumps books are kids' horror books. I mean, it's not wrong for movies to be aimed at children.
Yeah.
And, even if I didn't like it, I'm glad they're making more of them. I'm glad they're making genres that typically aren't kid-friendly.
Yeah, I agree. And, I am looking forward to seeing this film because you could clearly tell that in the first Goosebumps film, everybody was excited to be on board. Even Jack Black. He seemed a little more a little more wilder than usual, because you could tell that he was interested in playing as the creepy author of Goosebumps and all this stuff. And you could tell how much he was overacting into the first film, but not in a bad way. It was in a good way.
Interestingly, he never appears in the trailer.
Yeah, you know, I thought that was interesting as well, but it has been credited that he will be returning into the second installment of the film. Now, we'll keep you guys well informed on any information that we can gather from that as well, but the trailer is available right now on YouTube, as is any of these trailers that we're going to be discussing by the end of this episode, and I will include the link to all of these trailers in the description once the episode is finished its broadcast. Now, our next trailer is a more lighthearted children's film, Christopher Robin.
Oh, Christopher Robin.
Starring Ewan McGregor. Now, in this movie, Winnie the Pooh and friends reunite with old pal Christopher Robin, who's now an adult, and it's directed by Mark Forster. And this trailer just looks so good. Not necessarily in cinematic quality, but just the fact that it feels so heartwarming, you know?
Yeah, it's a live-action movie, but it has animated elements in Winnie the Pooh and the 100 Acre Woods crew. Mm-hmm. It's basically Christopher Robin, you know, he's a grown-up now, he has a job, he has a wife, he has a kid. And while taking a break, he accidentally falls into the 100 Acre Wood again, meets up with everyone there, and they follow him back to the real world to try to help him mend his relationship with his family. Mm-hmm. And as far as we can tell, this isn't some sort of hallucination on his part. Like, we see other people in the real world interacting with Pooh and Tigger and Piglet. So there's some magic going on here.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's like these scenes that I just like really enjoy, especially when you get to hear Pooh just like talking with Christopher Robin and everything, and it just kind of makes you remember back when you were a kid and you'd watch the old Winnie the Pooh cartoons when they'd come on TV and everything.
Yeah.
Because I believe they have the original voice actors on board to play as the 100 Acre Woods gang. Mm-hmm. So it just has this genuine sense of enjoyment, I guess. So I'm excited to hear about that one as well. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I would recommend you give that one a watch if you just want to get a little good smile into your morning. Our next trailer is a bit of an interesting one. It's called The Favorite. It's starring Emma Stone, Rachel Weisz, and Olivia Colman. A close confidant of Queen Anne competes with her cousin for influence and power, and it's directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. You know, I kind of had to give this one a little bit of respect because I sometimes have a tendency to enjoy royalty films, and this is from the person who worked on The Lobster, which was a very interesting science fiction film. I don't know. It seems like a decent little comedy / drama. It doesn't have that over the topness that you would see on a CW show or something like that. Brian, what are your thoughts?
These type of movies aren't really my cup of tea. I mean, it looks well made, and it looks like it has the chance to be incredibly cheesy if, you know, and my mother will probably end up seeing it because she actually loves those CW shows.
My mom, too. Oh, man. Okay. Well, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, on to the next trailer. Now, the next trailer is for Life Itself, a film that's kind of been getting a little bit of a reputation on IMDb. Now, it's starring Olivia Cooke, Olivia Wilde, Oscar Isaac, Antonio Banderas, and a bunch of other A-list celebrities as well. The lives of people from New York to Spain intersect over the course of different generations, and it's directed by Dan Fogelman. Now, it kind of feels as though this is one of those anthology films where it's a whole bunch of separate stories interlinked into one. Examples of anthology films are like, if you're a horror fan, then there's a VHS, which is a collection, is an anthology horror film with a bunch of different stories. If you're not into horror, Cloud Atlas, a very popular movie that's a very popular science fiction film with Tom Hanks and whatnot, that's also an anthology film that's all tied around the Cloud Atlas Sextet, which was a song that was created way back in history, but somehow carries relevance all the way through into the distant future and whatnot. And
it's weird.
Yeah. And this seems like an anthology film where it's like a lot of different relationships and love stories all build up into one. And it seems interesting enough to me. Each story itself seems pretty compelling that I'd watch separately on its own and whatnot. Brian, what are your thoughts?
A lot of stars, an impressive amount of stars, and that alone might make me want to see it. The focus on, relationships, that's never really my cup of tea, not something I actively go out and watch, but if it's on, TV one day, I'll put it on and watch it.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of have that same feel to it. It's definitely a film that I would watch if it just so happened to have popped up on my TV, or if it was on like a subscription channel or something like that. But it seems like an interesting enough film, and it's from, I believe it's from Amazon Prime Films and stuff like that, known for other works like The Big Sick and whatnot. But it seems like an interesting enough one. Our next trailer is an animated kids film, Wonder Park. It's starring Jennifer Garner, Mila Kunis, Ken Jeong, Matthew Broderick, and Kenan Thompson, and some pretty good A-list actors. Wonder Park tells the story of a magnificent amusement park where the imagination of a wildly creative girl named June comes to life, and it's directed by Dylan C. Brown. Now, the trailer, if you watch it, it's about this girl who stumbles into the woods, just walking around, having her own little adventure, when she comes across an entire amusement park that just for some reason has been abandoned. There's vines over the rides and all this stuff, but somehow she happens to be able to activate the entire amusement park. The rides start kicking in and everything. Suddenly tons of people start to magically appear out of nowhere. There's also talking animals, including a talking bear and a magic monkey. I'm not joking. All this is actually in the film, and it looks good enough. It looks pretty good to me. What are your thoughts, Brian?
I like it. I like the animation. I like the plot, and I especially love Ken Jeong and Kenan Thompson. So hopefully this will get Kenan out of his SNL rut right now.
Yeah, I agree. He needs to be in a lot more films.
He's tried. None of them have done well, and he started making jokes on the show about how long he's been on there, which is usually a sign that he'd like to go now.
Yeah, and he has every right to start appearing into more films, so I'm glad that he gets to at least be a voice actor in this film. Now, I am a huge fan of Ken Jeong as well, but I'm also a huge fan of Mila Kunis, which is why I definitely want to check out this movie. But yeah, that one we'd also recommend you give a watch if you're interested in another good little animated classic. Now, our last trailer is more of an interesting tale. It's called A Simple Favor, starring Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively. A Simple Favor centers around Stephanie, a mommy vlogger who seeks to uncover the truth behind her best friend Emily's sudden disappearance from their small town, and this is directed by Paul Feig. Now, the reason why this seems so interesting to me is because it's one of those films that, like, the character suddenly disappears. Her best friend just, like, vanishes, and nobody knows why. But it's also theorized that she might have been, like, a ghost or something like that. Or there might have been some foul play in order and whatnot, and it's like, I don't know. It has this sense of, like, everything's fine, with this hint that in the back, behind the scenes, no, there's something very, very wrong here. But we just don't know what's going on. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, it's hard for me to get excited for a Paul Feig film. I don't like the director. I really? Yeah,
Really?
I've never liked any of his films, and the stories from when he was working on Ghostbusters are especially bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, I guess you got a point there. You got a point. Well, I mean, that about does it for Trailer Talk, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm going to be putting in the link to the trailers in the description at the end of this episode, so please tune in, so that way you'll be able to check it out later. Anyways, without further ado, it's time for us to enter our discussion pieces. Are you ready to get into discussing, Brian?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, well, let's begin with a little bit of controversy. Now, the first piece we have to discuss is a more controversial one. Zero Cal Care is a cartoonist, well known internationally for his graphic novels. Now recently, he was invited to attend this year's San Diego Comic-Con, which is one of the biggest Comic-Cons in all the United States. We have tons of Comic-Cons all over the place. I know in Sacramento we usually have Wizard World, but San Diego is the big one. It's where all these huge trailers are announced and everything. Now, it was here that he was going to promote his latest graphic novel, Cobain Calling, Greetings from Northern Syria. The graphic novel is going to be about a cartoonist who volunteers with the Rojava Calling Organization and heads into the Middle East to support and observe the Kurdish resistance in Syria as they struggle against the advancing forces of the Islamic State. However, it would seem as though Zero Calcare is unable to attend this year due to some strange government interference. You see, Zero Calcare had to visit Iraq in order to do research on this project, so he had to try and get a U.S. Travel visa from the embassy over in Rome. However, his request was denied from the embassy due to the fact that Zero Calcare, being politically active, had shown concern for them, even though this guy has a clean slate and never done anything wrong for them to even bring up concern. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how to react to this. I'm pretty angry, for one. This guy's done absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah, his art is interesting. He's done a lot of stuff. He's criticized the U.S. government. He's done comics criticizing Guantanamo Bay. He's criticized some of our foreign policy. And this feels very much like it's a politically motivated... Yeah, he's politically active in that he's been criticizing the U.S.
I guess I can understand that, but... It just, it's not like he hasn't really done anything too bad. I mean, sure, he's done a couple of comics that's like, says a couple of bad things about stuff that happens in the U.S. Lots of American artists do this all the time in their webcomics. Yeah. There's even big headshot newspapers and magazines. I know the New York Times, they love having a field day with coming up with the latest comic or cartoon that's criticizing some new policy or some new thing going on in the United States.
Difference is the government can't kick them out for doing that, but they can keep Zero Calcare out for doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing though. Where is the line? Where is the difference where it's like suddenly you're not able to? Suddenly speaking your mind out about the United States suddenly makes you a problem of concern. Especially when it comes to a comic book. It's not like he's going to go walking into the streets doing a protest or something like this. He's just promoting a comic,
Yeah, honestly, I think the line is they don't want anyone criticizing them at all. And they have to deal with the fact that the New York Times and places like that are legally protected American institutions. They can't just kick people out or keep them out of America. But they will try to do their best to make the loud voices outside of America that they can keep out that are criticizing them from getting in.
I don't know, man. It's unfortunate. And we hope and pray that this guy eventually does get his travel visa to come back into the United States. I know that the company that he's working with, BAO, is trying to do their best to plead that he gets a visa so he can return as well. But all we can do is just hope at the moment, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, our next discussion is regarding a certain video game franchise known as The Calling. Or in this situation, it's The Calling 2. I'm sure you're excited about this little news piece, Brian.
Yeah, it's got a lot. It makes me feel a lot of emotions. Let's go with that for now. It's a lot of emotions.
Fair enough. Now, Brian introduced me to The Calling and The Calling 2, and it seems pretty interesting. At least the first one did. It's like a reality show / battle royale kind of game, heavily focused on melee combat. The basic premise is that you're an inmate on this game show, I guess, where the goal is to try and eliminate the other contestants in battle royale fashion.
It goes a bit more Hunger Games than battle royale in that aspect. It goes a bit more for the pomp and circumstance of the Hunger Games surrounding the death match as opposed to battle royale.
Fair enough. Sometime in late December, however, developers Xavient Games announced that they were giving up on The Calling and the game had been abandoned. However, recently, they announced The Calling 2, which is now available on Steam. If you play this one, however, and are familiar with the previous installment, you may notice that there are some slight changes made to the gameplay of The Calling 2. The most notable one is that they scrapped the focus on melee combat to have a more PUBG feel to it. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. You see, The Calling 2 comes with a number of flops, such as generic weapons, super dull locations, an announcer's voice that, unlike the first game, just doesn't know when to stop talking, vehicles are unable to be driven, and on top of it all, the absolutely minuscule party size.
Okay, we need to describe to you this as multiple multiple reviewers have gotten into games and won before they even dropped into the map because they were one of 2 or 3 people and the other people got disconnected. They've been able to win without anyone being able to fight. The day of launch, at its peak, there were 249 concurrent players. And when match sizes are, 50 people, that's less than 5 matches worth. By Thursday, the concurrent peak was 13.
Yeah.
13 players playing at once at peak time.
Yeah. And, and that's really concerning because to start a game, to actually get the game going, to run around and shoot people, you need a requirement of 50 players to enter a room, to finish the room. Unfortunately, this is nearly impossible, as most of the time, you'd be lucky to even hit double digits within a lobby. I remember seeing gameplay footage of this one reviewer who entered a room, and they were waiting for so long, everybody just went prone, and they started to make themselves glitch through the walls, trying to get out of the waiting room and just run around into this map and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous. This whole thing is a mess, and it brings me to a question. Are games sacrificing too much to become Battle Royale video games? Because this has become a very common thing. I know Black Ops is trying to do a kind of Battle Royale. I know Battlefield, when it's coming out, they're trying to do a Battle Royale mode. It seems like all these games are focused on a specific type of gameplay are scrapping things just so they can go on the Battle Royale bandwagon.
And see, the problem is, the Culling was a Battle Royale game before Battle Royale games became popular. It came out like a year before PUBG and Fortnite came out. It was ahead of its time and helped usher in the genre. The problem is, it was poorly developed, and while the gameplay was lauded for, having an emphasis on melee combat as opposed to range combat with, guns and things like that, mm-hmm. It was glitchy. There were a lot of patches that fundamentally changed the way combat worked, which led to players abandoning it, which eventually led to, in December of 2017, the developers announcing they were halting development on it, which was just 6 months after it both came out and was released on consoles. Actually, I believe it was only on Xbox, not PS4. Mm. But 6 months after they did their full release, they announced, hey, we're done developing for this. And then 7 months later, they surprise reveal, hey, we made a sequel to this game we gave up on. And games don't get developed in 7 months. Games of this size don't get developed in 7 months. This had to be planned, that they were going to stop developing for the Culling in order to get people to buy the Culling 2. The problem is, there are already better games than the Culling.
Yeah.
PUBG, Fortnite, Realm Royale, hell, totally accurate Battlegrounds is a better game than the Culling 2.
Yeah, I know, and it confuses me. It really does confuse me because the Culling had potential when it had started. People, even though it was more of a niche game, not everybody knew about the Culling. I didn't know about the Culling until I found out about the Culling 2. But from what I had seen from gameplay and whatnot, people really enjoyed the first installment. And a lot of original fans didn't care much for everything being scrapped and renewed to try and look a lot more like PUBG. Mm-hmm. And one of our biggest gripes is the lack of players in this game. Now, there are a lot of factors contribute to this. One is the fact that the gameplay is atrocious, and there's also the fact that all the resources are just bland. But another thing is that marketing, there wasn't really marketing for the Culling 2.
No.
This game kind of just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, there was no build-up, there was no secret campaign, there was no ARG, there was no anything. They just said, hey, this is out on Steam. Go buy it. No one did. I mean, 249 players at peak on launch day is just abysmal, but it's...
On a launch day, nonetheless.
This is probably going to kill this studio, honestly, because Xaviant hasn't always been in the best place. They've done a lot of niche games that, they make some money. They make enough to keep them afloat and doing the next game. Yeah. With how hard this game is bombing, this studio is dead.
Oh, yeah, it already is. They openly did a tweet and everything saying that they're just taking a moment to regroup and consider the future of that company and whatnot, which is just subtle hints at, yeah, we're not doing too well.
Yeah, do we sell the photocopier on eBay or Craigslist? Which will get us more money?
Exactly, man, exactly. But I mean, there's always a chance, I guess, to bring it back. I mean, try and focus more on some old gameplay mechanics, do some more promotion, do events, make the guns look prettier, not just super bland and whatnot.
Make the entire game look better. It looks really dated, the graphics.
It really does. And most importantly, stop trying to imitate other Battle Royale games.
Yeah, that's what gets me, is that the culling is chasing a trend it helped start. It helped start the popularity in Battle Royale, because it had a decent amount of popularity. It wasn't, the biggest game. But when it started changing, it started losing players. That's about when PUBG came out with, essentially, hey, we're this game, but better. Now imagine that, PUBG actually being the good game in a scenario.
Oh, God. Man.
Yeah,
it's crazy, man. I don't know. Anyways, our next discussion is regarding a certain video game... Wait, sorry. Backtracking here on news. My apologies. Now, for our last discussion piece, we have a story for you all that just sounds so cool, in my opinion. This is the greatest Hollywood story I've heard since the feud between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone over Stop, My Mom Will Shoot. Now, in case you aren't aware, Daniel Craig is getting ready for his next and possibly last James Bond film titled Bond 25. Now, he's been trying his best to get really into character for this Bond film, and he wants to make sure that his character is as realistic as possible. He really doesn't want any cheesiness, any fallacy in the way secret agents work, and he is not the only group or person who feels this way. It turns out that the CIA itself, the real CIA folks, and we learned this straight from the CIA, invited Mr. Craig to pay them a visit. And when he arrived, they discussed his character and all the things secret agents do in real life in comparison to the spies that we see on the big screen. From what we gathered, that the CIA explained to Mr. Craig the secret agents in the real world rely more on the cloak aspect of missions, such as intel gathering, going undercover, and etc., compared to the dagger aspect of the missions, which are all the high-octane fight scenes that we see in spy movies nowadays, particularly the 007 franchise. This visit really catches my attention, ladies and gentlemen, because it really makes you wonder if there are any spy movies out there that are genuinely realistic and not just popcorn movie-level spy films. And it makes you wonder if the CIA actually pays attention to these spy movies to see if they are in any way, shape, or form accurate.
I find this interesting, mainly because he went to visit an American intelligence agency as opposed to a British intelligence agency.
Right?
The ones James Bond... I'm wondering if British intelligence just didn't want to talk to him because they were afraid he'd, embarrass them with inaccurate, and maybe American intelligence is taking the chance to go, yes, make British intelligence look stupid. Make us look better.
Yeah. That could very much be a reason. I know that government agencies in the United Kingdom are a lot less tolerant about certain things and inviting certain people in and whatnot.
Yeah. While
American organizations, they've been a lot more well known to occasionally have somebody walk in and they'll just explain to them small things and whatnot. But the fact that Daniel Craig visited the CIA is very interesting. I think one of the main reasons why the CIA was fine with him being there is perhaps because while he is playing as a British intelligence agent, the film, I believe, is being shot in the United States. I know there are going to be some scenes in London, but I mean, any secret intelligence agency is a lot better than no intelligence agency, I guess. And it's not like that's not like they were laying out any specific things that are only in America. It sounds like they were just explaining to him how a secret agent works,
Mm-hmm.
But I am very interested in this film because I know for a fact that one of the person who's supposed to be handling the film for Bond 25, I tend to forget his name. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, but he's known for directing 28 Days Later, which is a very good horror movie in my opinion, and be a very interesting change of position, considering that the last director who had handled the previous two James Bond films was the guy who was behind American Beauty. So there are two different styles of cinematography going on within Bond 25, within the James Bond films, but I'm excited into seeing Bond 25. What are your thoughts, Brian?
Not a huge James Bond fan. Only movie I've seen is Skyfall, but I did love it.
Okay.
So, I'm willing to give this a chance. I'm willing to, sort of catch up on the Daniel Craig Bond films.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's definitely a really good Bond. He is pretty different from the previous installments, where all the other James Bonds were a lot more smooth talking, a lot more seducing the ladies, and then the last second doing a quick little judo chop or something like that. Where Daniel Craig, he's more like the Bourne Ultimatum kind of Bond, where it's a lot more action scenes, and he's not really focusing too much on the social aspects.
I mean, a lot of it was, he was early Bond. Casino Royale, he'd just gotten his 007. Quantum of Solace took place immediately after Casino Royale. This is sort of the early years. And in things like Skyfall and Spectre, we've seen him become more of the James Bond we're accustomed to, with all the gadgets, and the, martinis and things like that.
Definitely. So we'll keep you guys in touch, ladies and gentlemen, on any extra information that we have regarding the latest installment of the 007 franchise. But I thought I just wanted to share that little tidbit of news with you guys, seeing as it's a very interesting little factoid being brought into this. With that being said, I believe we have finally reached the end of today's episode.
Actually, I have one thing I'd like to say. Since
awesome.
We have a little extra time. It's less of a news story and more of a fun little tidbit I recently learned.
Awesome.
So we all know Aliens Colonial Marines. Came out in 2013, developed by Gearbox Software, and a laundry list of other developers that only came out after the fact.
I'd like to try and forget Colonial Marines.
Yeah, this game was a mess. The story is bland and generic and badly written and somehow canon to the Aliens franchise. It was horribly developed. The art assets look like they are from a PS2 game.
Yep.
The enemy AI doesn't work, especially the Xenomorph AI, which the Xenos, instead of, running along the walls through vents, using the environment to their advantage, actually posing a threat like the Xenomorphs in the movies do, they just sort of stand around and clump together. Some people have actually been able to run through levels full of Xenomorphs without ever getting attacked or shooting a bullet, because the AI just won't attack them.
And sometimes they even glitch, too, where they'll just, run into walls and everything, and they'll just stay there running into walls.
And we now know why that is.
Okay.
James Dickinson is a modder who's been working on a total overhaul mod for Colonial Marines to make it good, hopefully.
Okay.
And he discovered a mistake in the AI coding for the Xenomorphs.
Ooh.
It turns out that, and there's a lot of coding jargon in here, so I'm just going to try to boil it down. Essentially, the Xenomorphs know where to go by tethering themselves to environmental objects.
Okay.
That's how they know what's in the environment and how to interact with it and how to move around in it. Except in the code, they misspelled the word tether. They added an A to it to make teether. So So for 5 years in this game, the Xenomorphs have essentially been blind. They don't know what's in the environment around them. They don't know what's happening because someone accidentally hit A. For 5 years, this game has essentially been horrifically broken because one of the coders added an A, and no one bothered testing this. No one saw this as a problem, and no one went in to fix this very easy problem. James Dickinson, the modder, actually has an instruction up on his website of how to easily fix this if you own the PC version. If you own it on consoles, you're kind of out of luck. I'm sorry. That's just a reality. But hopefully, if this gets enough traction, it'll encourage Gearbox to release a very easy patch to fix this game. It's as simple as deleting the letter A from one line of code. That's what has been breaking part of this game. That doesn't excuse the terrible writing, the terrible Wayland Yutani UI, the terrible art, the terrible sound design, the terrible everything except the Xenos. But this does sort of explain the Xenos.
Man, that's ridiculous. Oh my god, because I remember when my friend Parker, he'd finally gotten it for the PlayStation 3, and it was supposed to be a pre-order, so I believe it came with some DLC and everything, and we just couldn't stop laughing over how terrible these AI would move. Sometimes we'd be standing there, and the Xenomorphs would be there, but instead of paying attention to us, they're just running around into walls and different things until we got really, really close to them. And to figure out that all of that was because of one little extra letter in the code.
Yeah. I think this is an important lesson for anyone in future Alien movies. Just write the letter A on a piece of paper and show it to your Xenomorph, it'll just start running into walls. That's the ultimate weakness of xenomorphs, the letter A.
Their kryptonite's the letter A. I love it. Oh my god.
Anyway, I thought that was just a fun story and a fun public service announcement for those of you that own it on PC and for whatever reason still play the game.
Oh man. Okay, well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of today's episode of the Phone Booth here on KXVS, the voice of Stockton. Brian, do you have any closing words before we exit here?
In case of xenomorph, have the letter A.
Duly noted. Okay, so stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We might have some more amazing content here on KXVS, the voice of Stockton. And without further ado, from the Phone Booth, we wish you all a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.